turning into a robot. Anywhere's fun.
Yeah. You can,
This is good. Good morning, everyone. Chief, former chiefs, generals, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for allowing me to have the opportunity to come speak to you today for a little bit. And before I get started into my brief and discussion, I would like to spend just a moment saying thank you to the cadets of the Norwegian Air Force Academy. I'm a class of '89 grad from the U.S. Air Force Academy, and definitely set me on the path for what I've been doing for the last 28, almost 29 years of my life. Thank you for your service. It is one of the greatest achievements and one of the greatest sacrifices any individual can make for your country. So hopefully these couple of days will give you some context and some insight for how the old people are thinking and what the old people are worried about, and also maybe get you out of a couple of physics classes and calculus classes along the way. It will be you, honestly, that will be solving most of these problems that we're talking about. I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking about the joint concept for access and maneuver in the global commons. As you know, in the United States military, we certainly love to put out very long terms like this one. So I am not going to use that term again today. I will say JAM-GC because we also love our acronyms at the same time. So I will be referring to this as JAM-GC for the rest of the discussion this morning. This is a disclaimer. You don't have to worry about reading it. It simply says I'm not going to try to sell you anything from the U.S. government, and I'm not going to ask you to buy anything for the U.S. government. All right, so getting into the discussion, I'm going to keep this at a high level. A lot of the concept itself is of a classified nature, and quite honestly, a lot of this concept is still evolving, as I will show you a little bit later on with the timelines of its development and where it came from with the air-sea battle concept. The background, though, of why this is important and why we are using this as a concept in the joint force in the United States right now is to try to get after a problem that, quite honestly, we didn't create, but it's a problem that has created or evolved over time by us kind of ignoring world events or staying focused on other world events. So it's let us take our eye off the ball of what some of our adversaries have been doing over the last 20 to 25 years. The U.S. and our allies are combined a global power with global interest. With those global interests, we have a need and a necessity to abide by the rules of international law and also have free and open trade, free and open access to the global commons around the world, be it the sea lanes, be it airspace, be it space itself, be it cyberspace. That is what we consider the global commons. Since the end of the Cold War, we've kind of had no real challenges to that. There's been no adversary that has challenged the U.S. or the Allies to either resist or not allow or try to keep us from penetrating anything that we consider global commons in any of the domains that I just talked about. That ease of access has allowed our thinking to evolve away from worrying about it or not really considering it as a problem. And then over the last 10 to 15 years, as General Gorentz will talk about here very soon with the A2AD threat, the rise of A2AD challenges and threats by certain adversaries has allowed the adversaries to become a threat to us and a threat to the global commons and our ease and our freedom of access to them. General Dunford probably stated it best, and he stated this last year as they were rolling out the joint concept. One of our primary operational center of gravity is our ability to globally project power anywhere around the globe and in any domain at any time. That has been what has allowed us as the U.S. and the Allies to have this freedom of maneuver for the last really 50 to 60 years overall. So what's at risk? It's our credibility of our security commitments, credibility of our alliances, credibility of our treaties, and then obviously the global commons and the ability to maneuver and work inside them themselves. So here's the challenge. How do we maintain the freedom of action in spite of these advanced threats, which really are designed to prevent us this freedom of access? The A2AD technology, I'm not going to, again, get into much of that, but I'll talk about some of the threat characteristics real briefly. We've had traditional threats. So you can think Russia and the reemergence of Russia and some of the threats that they have with their nuclear power, their nuclear forces. The emergence of China as a global actor on the global stage. Many of the same type of capabilities and same type of threats as they have started to evolve and evolved over the last 15 years. We have regional threats, such as Iran. We have also regional threats, such as North Korea, but they can present a global threat, despite the fact that we think that they're a regional power. The range, lethality, and sophistication of many of our adversaries' weapons continue to grow to the point that they're outpacing some of our capabilities right now. And then this is occurring, the threat is occurring and growing and evolving across all domains. One way to think of it is, 20 or 25 years ago, we really only thought in air, land, and sea domain when we talked military and we thought about military operations. Cyber and the cyber domain really hadn't even been defined. 20 or 25 years ago, you could have told me cyberspace, and I would have said it was something out of a science fiction movie and really didn't understand what it was. Now, it's an area where we're going to be contested and are contested every day. The same can be said for space. 25 years ago, we thought of space as a place where we had satellites and communication satellites and some satellites that told us weather and GPS. Now, that same area is obviously and is currently being contested and starting to be disputed, again, with some of our adversary capabilities and what they're possibly going to be able to do to us should they want to. So the environment I just talked about, what does that create? Disrupted communications, so it hinders our ability to do command and control. Threats to the space systems that I just talked about. Cyber attacks, again, those two domains that we did not have or we did not even worry about 25 years ago, now are two primary domains where we're contested. The ability for adversaries to employ ballistic missile and cruise missile attacks, both against land attack and anti-ship. We think of that in the context for the Air Force especially is we tend to operate from large bases around the world, and the last 20 to 25 years with not being contested has allowed us to do that. This concept and JAMGC is trying to get us to think differently about how we want to operate so we can work around some of these threats that I'm talking about. Directed energy attack, directed energy, think lasers capability that the adversaries are developing. Mine warfare. I talked about command and control, and I talked about the problems with command and control. We are so reliant on space, we're reliant on cyber, we're reliant across all the other three domains for command and control to have all of those domains working together. If you take any one of them out, think especially space or cyber, you can greatly hinder our ability to execute operations anywhere around the world day in and day out. So this is the environment that we're dealing with. That is the contested environment that JAMGC is working to and trying to work forward to solve. So where did this come from? I talked about in the 2009 timeframe, I think you've heard the term air-sea battle, and to go to the many, many terms that we like to have, some last longer and some are shorter than others. This was an attempt by the Air Force and the Navy to get after how we deal with an A2AD environment and an emerging A2AD environment that we had in the Pacific with the South China Sea and the first island chain with China. So that was kind of the primary driver, the genesis of where it started and the concept of how do we do this, and kind of in a similar mindset of how we did air-land battle decades ago and came up with that concept with the Army. As they worked through it, thought through how we fight and how we will do the joint fight better, they realized that probably this should not just be an Air Force and a Navy initiative or Air Force and Navy effort. So In 2015, just a couple of years ago, the director of the Joint Staff said, let's revise the air-sea battle concept into the JAM-GC concept that we're talking about today. And that was signed last year, and then the transition plan was put into place literally just last summer. What is it? I'm not going to read all of this to you. I'm going to talk about some of the central themes momentarily. I will tell you what my opinion of this is. It is not rocket science. It is not inventing some new technology. It is not anything that is earth-shattering. It is how do we make the joint force fight better and synchronize better in the domains that we have and the domains that have evolved over time, and how do we do that against an adversary that will be contesting us in all of those domains. So again, that's not any new piece of equipment. That's not any great new idea. That is putting hard thought to how we fight and how we will employ in these domains going forward, and how we will do it against an adversary that can contest and fight back and disrupt us in all of those domains. So we'll talk briefly about some of the building blocks, because I think this is really the key slide and the key takeaway for the JAM-GC discussion. There's 5 primary tenets to the concept itself. The first one being distributable. That is the concept of the thought that our forces should be able to deploy, disperse, and fight in an environment where we have different locations. We're not necessarily centrally located with any of our employment, with any of our forces. We have the ability to disperse and also command and control those dispersed forces throughout that contested or throughout those contested environments, and then be able to concentrate combat power when and where required against an adversary. The second concept, the second primary concept for this is, or idea and theme, is being resilient. We have fought over the last 20 to 25 years adversaries where most of the risk, I'll say it's a low risk to no risk environment. In Iraq, think Afghanistan, think a lot of the places that we have fought and worked against adversaries. This environment that we're talking about now, we have to make the assumption that we are in a much higher risk environment where we're going to be operating in all of these domains, and we can expect probably to take losses that historically or in the past couple of decades would either be deemed unacceptable or too high of a risk to operate in. That simply is not the case going forward in an A2AD environment, because the enemy will get a vote, and the enemy will get much greater of a vote because of his capabilities. So we will have to be resilient. Really means being able to take a punch and being able to punch back and keep on fighting. Tailorable. Forces now need to be commanded, controlled, and employed in temporary or permanent structure to accomplish assigned missions. What that means is we've got to be able to tailor our forces to the needs of the adversary we may be going against, to either deter or to actually counter them in a fight if and when that time comes. And again, I'm not thinking in the traditional domains that we're used to talking about. So that being the air, that being the sea, and that being the land. We're also talking being able to contest in the cyber domain and being able to contest in the space domain and across all of them. Sufficient scale, another one of the key themes. So increased capacity. So this is talking now about some of our technologies we need to continue to develop and continue to work on to counter the adversary's increased capabilities that they have across all of these domains. So think better weapons, think F-35s, think better capability to counter our adversaries with some of their space capabilities. Think a capability to counter our adversaries with their cyber capabilities. So this is about expanding the competitive space to fight potentially against our adversaries, and then make sure all of those capabilities that we're talking about are connected and networked and talk to each other so we can command and control it. To me, that's what it all comes back to, is command and control, and being able to do that in additional domains that we're fighting in now. And then for an ample duration, kind of call it staying power. One of the biggest overlooked aspects of fighting potentially or working across the global commons against an adversary that has a near or better capability than we do with our forces is the ability to do that and maintain a logistics train and maintain the logistics to continue a fight potentially for longer than what we've expected or what we're expecting. Over the last 20 or 25 years, the logistics train to where we have been employed and engaging in conflict for the U.S. has largely been uncontested. We've not had to really worry about an interruption in any of our logistics. That will certainly not be the case in an A2AD environment if we have an adversary that is fighting back and fighting back aggressively. So here's some of the similarities between JAM-GC and the air-sea battle. Recognition of the same problem. It's the same problem set overall with similar elements that we're talking about down here, being and the emphasis on needing to be multi-domain, multi-service, multifunctional, and I'll say multinational in how we get after this problem. Again, I try to boil things down. I'm an A10 guy by trade, so I try to keep things as simple as possible. The way I look at this is we have to be good at fighting not only a joint fight, but fighting and being ready to fight an allied and partnered fight against a near-peer adversary. That means everything we do needs to be able to connect to each other, needs to be networked with each other, needs to be compatible with each other's assets that we may work off of or operate from, and then also be able to be commanded and controlled across those domains by similar or like capabilities. That doesn't mean we all have to buy exactly the same airplane or exactly the same ship or exactly the same tank or radio. What it does mean is we have to train with what we have, and we have to make sure that what we have is compatible and works with the other nation's equipment and other services equipment. Lord knows we in the U.S. and the U.S. military have our share of scar tissue with trying to be compatible with just even our own services. And recognizing that and trying to get after that problem now with additional domains to deal with really is the crux of this problem. So when you overlay that and then you overlay the multinational aspect and how critical that is going forward, that is the root cause and the root problem of what we're trying to get after here with this concept. I'll talk about real quick some of the differences. There's more emphasis on the JAM-GC with distributability and resilience, and there's also an acknowledgement that was not an air-sea battle of the adversary may actually have numerical advantages, which is something we have not historically thought about or worried about in the last couple of decades. And then we've changed the how. Whereas air-sea battle was oriented on adversary systems, JAM-GC is more oriented on the adversary plan and trying to defeat the intent of the anti-access area denial fight that the enemy or problem that the enemy is posing to us. So this is a roll-up slide of where we're at. It's intended to aid the commanders, planners, and force developers. And like I said, there is no one silver bullet. There is no one answer that this concept tries to get after. It is an acknowledgement of some problems that we have had, or problems that have been brewing and building as a result of additional domains and as a result of what the adversaries are doing over the last 20 years. It helps us on how we're going to plan operations going forward. And the biggest thing, I think, is it's going to help us on how we develop our forces going forward. And that's both U.S. forces and allied forces and how we will potentially fight. That is it. That is where we're at right now. I would love to talk some of the details, but unfortunately cannot do it in this forum. A number of aspects of the concept itself are classified, so unfortunately can't do it since we're live streaming and have the I had the disclaimer up there at the beginning, so that's why we really can't talk about it. But that is where we're at with this concept. It is a foundational concept to the things that General Gorence is going to talk about, and then we're going to talk about with multi-domain battle, and that's where we're hoping to get this off the ground and continue to develop it over time. And look forward to talking during the debate session in a little bit. Make sure I get this. Is that it? All right.
So, on behalf of the Royal Norwegian Air Force Academy, and we thank you for traveling all the way from the States and giving us this inspiring presentation and your point of view on the multi-domain battle.